I'll take a... Thank you. I was just getting into
I call Harete Hipango.
Malolele, kia ora nā kia ora anō.
Thank you once again.
Mr. Speaker, in standing to address the House on the Statutes Amendment Bill, perusing through this, it is about tidying up legislation, as my colleague, the Honourable Jackie Dean, indicated, and clarifying minor technical corrections that need to be made. So as I have perused through this bill, it's interesting that now as a Member of Parliament I note that there are a number of parts to this bill as proposed amendments that I have acted upon as council. So I refer specifically to Parts 3, Care of Children Act 2004, Part 4, Child Support Act 1991, and the parts that I'll be reading out in the relevant corresponding legislation is about aligning them in terms of an amendment where a lawyer appointed to represent a child or young person or to assist the court may submit his or her invoice for fees and expenses to any registrar of the court. Previously, Mr Chair, it was a case where counsel, having been appointed by the particular court, were required to file their invoice to that court that they were appointed by, which may have been out of town at times. So that's Part 5. That is also Part 11, which is to do with the Domestic Violence Act. Again, similarly, it is about streamlining and increasing efficiencies to facilitate the development of a central unit for the processing and payment of service provider invoices. So where counsel have been appointed by the court to assist in that capacity, either representing a child or any other person or a party, with this amendment under the Statutes Amendment Bill, are now enabled to file the expenses to any registrar of the court. So that's for Part 13 as well, Family Proceedings Act. Part 23, Protection of Personal and Property Rights Act 1988. And these are all legislation under this bill that is standardising and making consistent and aligning. It's also interesting that I note there are other provisions under this bill where the amendments proposed are pieces of legislation that I have appeared before the court on in acting and addressing the court. I refer to Part 10, the District Court Act 2016, where it is conferred on community magistrates and justices of the peace the same powers as judges to deal with contempt in the course of proceedings before them. There has been occasion when, as counsel, I have appeared in court, judges have been abused, magistrates have been abused, and justices of the peace. However, there's not been recourse for our magistrates and justices of the peace, as there now is with this proposed amendment. I also speak further to my participation and involvement with justices of the peace at Part 19 of this bill, the JP Act of 1957, where it seeks to enable or to empower the Secretary for Justice to authorise a Justice of the Peace with less than 10 years of service to use the designation JP retired. That is, if the Secretary thinks it appropriate in the circumstances, which may be as a result of ill health, injury or disability, to have them designated as a JP retired rather than having to, in effect, serve 10 years of service before that recognition and acknowledgement is duly accorded. I also refer to another piece of legislation that I have acted upon as counsel, Part 20 Parole Act 2002, which makes it an offence to breach an extended supervision order. There is an amendment proposed adding a new offence where a breach of an interim supervision order would require imposition of a penalty. Previously it hasn't. Importantly, under the Parole Act, there is a further proposed amendment significantly placing on the Chief Executive similar requirements to notify victims in respect of these interim supervision orders that have been breached. The same entitlement all standard that is there for the extended supervision order is now proposed with the amendment. There are other pieces under this legislation that, opportunity permitted, I would speak to. Time permitting, it is a case of other members within my party to address the chairman unless the Honourable Seo has wished to respond to any part that's been addressed to the House.
Members, the question is that the Minister's amendment set out on SOP number 55 be agreed. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. The question is that parts 1 to 28 and clauses 1 and 2 as amended stand part. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. I will report this bill with amendment.
Mr. Chair.
Madam Speaker, the committee has considered the Statutes Amendment Bill number 2 and reports it with amendment. Madam Speaker, I move that the report be adopted.
The question is that the report be adopted. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. In accordance with a determination of the Business Committee, this bill is set down for third reading forthwith. The Honourable Opito William Seo.
Maloela Malie, kau whakafonga, Madam Speaker.